Okay, so I think there's very few people that would have seen a posting I made months and months ago regarding my drive shaft, and in particular the U joint, the aft U joint at the rear differential. I'm not sure of the orientation of this drawing here. It doesn't really orient you, but it's neither here nor there. The aft U joint is completely bitched. So I bought a new propeller shaft, central drive shaft, if you will. Not cheap, nearly $700 Canadian, which is what, 400 British pounds ish, 500 euro, a lot of money. My car is not worth that much money. It's worth a couple of $1,000s on a good day. The problem is, how do you replace an all-wheel drive vehicle at a reasonable cost? It's going to cost you a lot more than $700, I can assure you that. So, believe you me, I don't part with my money very easily, but in this particular instance I did. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, anybody who knows the SX4 is probably aware that on eBay you can in fact buy a rebuild kit for these, where you can actually replace the joint. However, Suzuki tells you that it's not replaceable. If you read this statement here, I don't need to read it for you. You can read it if you choose to do so. So you're in a position where you have to replace the shaft. Now you can go ahead and buy the U joints, the rebuild kits that are available. I think they're like $100 Canadian on eBay. And believe you me, I really gave it some serious thought. There's a fella who does a lot of work with the SX4. His channel's called Volvo Sweden. I'll put it in the edit. He does a lot of good work with the SX4. His approach is different from mine, but he does a lot of good work with the SX4. I don't want to knock it. I don't want to come off as a sound like I'm knocking him. I'm not at all. As I said, anybody who makes a positive contribution to the SX4 community is okay by me. However, I'll show you in his video, and I suggest you read the comments thread. Don't just read the first couple of comments. Read the entire thread with respect to the comments. And then you can decide for yourself whether you want to do the rebuild. Maybe you'll get lucky, and if you do, good on you. But I decided to go the safe route and actually get a new shaft because I'm just fed up revisiting stuff. Yeah, I know you could possibly do it cheaper, as I said, but in this instance, I'm just going to take the safe route, put a new shaft in, and be done with it. And believe you me, it vexes me to no end to have to part with $700 for something like this. However, having said that, my buddy is a former parts guy at the Suzuki dealership, former dealer, Suzuki dealership. It's a Nissan dealership in Brampton, Ontario here. He's been working there for 15 years. These used to be $1,800 Canadian, so there's been a significant price drop in the supply of them for the OEM part. It's down to around 700 Canadian now, so yeah, no choice. So I'll show you the process of getting this in and out. However, there's one thing I want to show you, because credit where credit's due. This is my cousin's boy. This is Ben Young. He's in Collingwood, Ontario, and this year he is the 2019 Canadian Superbike champion. 1000cc. Ben is, I think he's 23 or 24 these days, and yeah, just went to a wee gala, shall we call it, more like drinking beer in a brewery, to celebrate Ben's championship year. So good on him. Hope he can repeat it again next year. He's been riding a bike since he was 4 years of age, and he's got the scars to show it. So good on him, Ben. Good on you, Ben. All the best, pal. All the best for next year. We'll carry on with it. Okay, so I don't have much clearance with the floor here, but here's the joint, and I can't actually show you that much play, but I wonder if you can see how close this is. The joint is actually collapsing to the point where the yokes are actually nearly touching each other here. Maybe I'll be able to show you it better once we get it out, but it's causing like a vibration because of the offset. Again, I've got it in gear here. I dare not take it out of gear because I don't want it crushing me. As I said, I'll show it to you when we got it. You'll probably see it a bit clearer. Okay, so I'm hoping the removal should be fairly straightforward here. There's just 4 bolts on each flange. I think they're 10mm. I'll confirm that for you, but 10mm hex. But I believe they're also internal wrenching Allen, I believe. but we'll get to that. And of course both sides, front and rear. And there's also where I'm trying to see this through the camera here, a hanger bearing. I'm a wee bit worried about this because these are actually studs and nuts. This car's 10 years old. These are going to be rusted something fierce, so I want to be delicate with these so I don't cause myself more grief. Right, let's see how it goes. Right, so my concern is in fact substantiated. So you can see the nut, we're on the center, the hanger bearing here, the center of the shaft, and you can see the degree of corrosion that's actually on those studs. Now that stud is obviously welded into the floor, as far as I know. I don't know the other side, but as far as I know it's probably just spot welded to the floor. If you break that, you're going to cause yourself no end of grief, so take your time. What I've done is I've got this one somewhat cleaned up. Of course, hit it with a penetrating oil ahead of time if you can. Clean it with a wire brush, ideally a pneumatic or electric tool to scrub it as much as you can. And what I do is I usually, in a scenario where I really don't want to break it, is I usually heat it with a torch. Be careful you don't set anything in your interior on fire or exterior, and take appropriate precautions, of course. My lawyer said to say that. And then, where's my bottle? Sorry, I don't have much clearance on the floor here. Here, and then have some a spray bottle handy, and hit it with a cold water, and the thermal shock will assist you in actually breaking it loose. I don't have this completely loose yet, but I'm getting it so I can turn it. And set your gun a very modest amount of torque, because the last thing you want to do is, as I said, shoot it. Just twist the thing right off. And what I do is I usually actually tighten that a wee bit first and then start working it back and forth, so just get till you get the point where you know you're getting some freedom. This is no news to anybody who's a mechanic, but for us hobbyists it helps, right? Every wee bit helps. So take your time, clean it, hit it with a penetrating oil, hit it with the heat if you need to, being careful with all the concerns, and take your time. This is a straightforward nut and bolt job, right? This is not too interesting, but this is either going to make or break your day for you, I would think. And I'm not there yet, so I'm hoping I'm hoping I can follow my own advice. Yeah, so okay, not to labor the point here, boys, but this is where the money is on this job. If you balls this up, as I said, this is a straightforward nut and bolt job, but if you balls this up, you're going to be sorry. So do this first, so the two flanges are holding the shaft in place to make it easy for yourself, of course. And then undo the aft and then the forward one, because obviously this is, if you undo it, you're going to have nothing holding it there. So I'll just put that back up and temporarily hold it loosely, and just work the nut back and forth, tighten it, untighten it until you scrub the rust from the threads, because we're trying to save money here. This thing's expensive to start with. Don't make it more expensive or more grief for yourself. Okay, so here I am at the front shaft here, fellas. The front U-joint, just where it comes out from the transfer case output shaft on the flange there. Just mark an index mark so you know how things are oriented. This old shaft is not going back, so that's not the issue, but I just want to keep the orientation between the output flange here and the differential the same, so I've done the same back at the diff. So at the 6 o'clock position I've got this marked, so just in case anything moves. Nothing's going to move in my case, I don't think, but just so it goes all back in the same orientation. Save yourself some grief. Just because of the geometry of this, these are in fact 10mm bolts that go through. There's 4 of them, of course. You do not want to buggerize these. If you if you end up snapping one of these inside the flange, again, no end to the grief. So use judicious judgment when you're actually removing them. This has actually come in handy. I've got what is it they call these? Aviation Spanners, supposedly, and it is actually nice because there's a nice long arm on it. You can get a fair bit of torque on it and actually pop it out if you can't get your tooling in here, and it's a pretty tight fit. But anyway, keep the mark in mind. I think it makes good sense. So there we go, boys. Successfully removed, and this is the trouble end. It is grinding like unbelievably. This has been an issue for quite some time, clearly. I don't know if you can see the offset in the yokes there, how far that is out. This joint is just destroyed, clearly. So that's the hanger bearing and the front joint are actually in pretty good shape. So yeah, so here's the new one. It's like Christmas, isn't it? Only this one comes with a pretty significant bill. Actually, it's just like Christmas. So I'm just showing you this. I'll just show you the part number here, boys. There's the Suzuki part number. That might be of some use to somebody coming to helping them find stuff. And another label up here. Yeah. Okay, so I'll take you up to the bench here for just a second. I'm just about to apply the Loctite to the... I've got all the attached hardware cleaned up. I might have said these were 10 millimeters earlier. They are in fact 12 millimeters. The 4 bolts that go on each flange, the front and rear, and on the hanger bearing, these are 2 14 millimeter. Here's the torque spec for them if you're interested. I suspect you are interested if you've stuck with me this long. So there's the 8 nuts, or sorry, 8 bolts that attach to the flanges themselves. Use your particular torque spec of choice, unit of measure, and the hanger bearing is 40 foot-pounds. So yeah, I'm going to put a wee bit of Loctite on those and hang everything up. I'm going to just before I do so, because the shaft is removed, it gives me unfettered access to the floor. I'm going to apply a wee bit of corrosion protection, which would be normally behind this, and clean the flange where these actually go to, so everything sits nice and flush, of course. So yeah, pretty straightforward apart for that, but it's going to be the biggest part on the car dimensionally, I would think. Should I be worried when I'm buying parts this big? Maybe, but you know, car's in pretty decent nick still. When do you let go, right? When is it time for one of them? I don't know, hard to say. There you go, boys. Everything in situ. Sorry, I'm so close here, but I'm on the floor here. I've only got maybe 18 inches of clearance. Make sure when you make this back up, if you didn't mark it, you'll see by the corrosion, there's actually a depression. 2 sides with a depression and 2 sides with a flat on both the front and rear flanges. Make sure they mate up in the original configuration at the very least. Yeah, so torque these to the spec that I pointed out earlier, 17 foot-pounds and 40 foot-pounds for these, whatever that is in Newton meters. If you use that spec, I have no idea what that translates to. Check the chart. Yeah, so no difficult job, boys, just a nut and bolt issue. The takeaway from this job is take your time on those studs, or your day will go from bad to worse. So let me take you to the Volvo Sweden's page. Okay, so as I mentioned at the start of the video, there is an alternative to replacing the drive shaft itself. And if you go to Volvo Sweden's YouTube page, you can see exactly how to do that. I think he shows you where you can order the U-joints and the procedure he goes through for that. So why did I choose not to go that route? Being the cheap bastard I am, that would have been expected. Read the comments. Read all the comments, right? Make sure you read right to the end of the thread, and you'll see why I decided not to go that route and just actually replace the shaft. I'm gonna add this as an addition to pretty much each video I do every time. Just some music I can recommend. This band here, one of the greatest Canadian bands ever, in my opinion. They're kind of a punk rockabilly band. They were really prominent in the 70s, late 70s, all through the 80s, 90s. Unfortunately, Frankie Venom died I guess it's 5 years ago, plus maybe now. So unfortunately, they are still on the go, but not in their original form. So if you're interested in music at all, as some of you kind of know my taste in music, I like everything. I like everything from Motorhead to ABBA, and I'm not kidding. Teenage Head, go check them out. Right, that's it, boys. Cheers.